Good evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Parikshit Luthra and here are the headlines we are tracking at this hour. Hundreds of GoAir passengers stranded as the cash-strapped airline suspends operations for 2 days. CEO Kaushik Khona says the voluntary bankruptcy filing is aimed at protecting assets and finding a resolution. Adds that engine maker Pratt & Whitney is defying Singapore court order and not paying claims worth $950 million. That's an exclusive.
Presently, as a situation, as we all have clearly clarified, the financial situation doesn't permit us to continue the operation, and therefore we have been kind of stalling and cancelling the bookings for next three days.
GoAir CEO says promoters Wadia Group have infused capital worth 6,500 crore rupees and further infusion is meaningless unless Pratt & Whitney can deliver engines. Also adds that Wadia has remained committed to the airline. Stock markets tread with caution across Europe and the US ahead of the Fed's rate decision. A CNBC survey shows 100% of market participants expect a rate hike tonight and a pause in June. Crude oil prices plunge on rate hike fears. SameSex and Nifty snap a 6-day winning streak to end with marginal losses. Mid-cap index bucks the trend to end in the green. Bond yields cool to the lowest level in 13 months, boosting the borrowing prospects of corporate India. Ather and Ola will reimburse customers to the tune of 270 crore rupees to comply with subsidy cap under the FAME scheme. TVS and Hero Moto will also make small refunds. Sources say government will release subsidies that were withheld on payment of reimbursement to customers. That's an exclusive. Setback for Deloitte and a KPMG affiliate in the Island FS fraud case. The Supreme Court sets aside Bombay High Court's order quashing Corporate Affairs Ministry proceedings to prosecute auditors, allows the SFIO to initiate proceedings. The Apex Court holds that there had been no arbitrary exercise of power in the centre's decision to act against auditors. The centre agrees to form a multi-ministry panel to examine whether certain rights can be granted to same-sex couples without legal recognition to their relationship. Tells the Supreme Court that they would welcome suggestions from the petitioners. The Apex Court pushes petitioners to submit their suggestions, says progress can be achieved through incremental steps. Ukraine denies any involvement after Russia accuses Kyiv of a drone attack on the Kremlin to assassinate Vladimir Putin. Russia claims 2 drones that attempted to attack Kremlin were shot down. Enforcement Directorate conducts searches at Manappuram Finance's premises. Sources say the searches are in connection with the allegation that the company has collected public deposits over 100 crores without RBI nod. Allegations also pertain to cash transactions without following KYC norms. Wrestlers continue their protests for the 11th day, seeking arrest of Federation Chief and BJP MP Brij Bhushan Singh over allegations of sexual harassment. The Delhi police is yet to arrest Singh despite filing 2 FIRs against him. Indian Olympic Association President P.T. Usha visits the protest site, assures support days after criticizing wrestlers for indiscipline. The street battles continue in Sudan as warring generals keep fighting despite extending a ceasefire deal. Indian government says nearly 3,500 Indians have been evacuated so far and the last flights upland tomorrow. Also on the show, Madhya Pradesh farmers struggling with bumper harvests even as the government puts into place a market intervention scheme. Experts say the scheme is restrictive as it usually applies only to a couple of crops. A special report from rural Madhya Pradesh. The top story this evening, investors across the world are waiting with bated breath as the US Federal Reserve gears up to announce its rate decision tonight. A CNBC Fed survey shows 100% of market participants are expecting a rate hike, but only 59% say the Fed should be hiking rates given the banking crisis in the United States. A majority expects this to be the last rate hike in this cycle, with 77% expecting the Fed to hold rates in June. Here are some economists and market experts with their expectations from the US Fed.
The big picture problem is inflation. And if we just respond to market movements, we're just going to be pushed around and we're not going to solve the problem because they're going to go back to what happened in the late 70s, early 80s when the Fed paused too soon. Ultimately, 25 basis points one way or another is not going to make or break the U.S. economy.
Fed is going to avoid the stop-and-go monetary policy of the 1970s when, they had to hike on 3 different occasions to really kill the back of inflation finally in the 80s. And I do think that positioning is also centered around a hike this time of 25 basis points.
So we expect the Fed to go 25 basis points. That's pretty much priced into the market. The more interesting question is what they signal about the June meeting and the path of rates going forward. We think that they'll signal a pause as the base case scenario, but they'll keep the path, they'll keep the door open. Our base case is that a mild recession will start in the third quarter of this year. It'll be about less than a 1% contraction from peak to trough in GDP. And to put that in perspective, that's about half the size of a normal average post-war recession.
Stay tuned for CNBC-TV18. Our Fed coverage starts at 11 p.m. We will bring you all the action live from Washington to Wall Street. And Dalal Street ended marginally in the red, and so did most Asian markets despite the upbeat sentiment across Europe and US. Nifty and SameSex snapped its 6-day winning streak to end 0.25% lower. Broader markets outperformed the blue chips with the mid-cap index ending in the green. From stocks to the money market, India's 10-year bond yield fell to a 13-month low. Rate hike fears, combined with falling crude oil prices on fears over global demand, have led to cooling off in yields. Dealers expect the yield to fall below the 7% mark, but for now it may find a floor at 7%. The big corporate story this evening: the National Company Law Tribunal will hear the insolvency plea filed by GoFirst tomorrow. The cash-strapped airline blamed its engine supplier Pratt & Whitney for failing to supply over the last 3 years, and its current financial situation does not permit it to continue operations. GoFirst has halted operations for today and tomorrow, leaving hundreds of passengers stranded across the country. The airline has also stopped bookings from the 6th of May to the 15th of May. Speaking exclusively to CNBC-TV18, the CEO of GoFirst, Kaushik Khona, said the voluntary insolvency plea is to protect the airline's assets and find a resolution. He claimed that Pratt & Whitney owes the airline closer to $950 million and is defying an arbitration order delivered in Singapore. GoFirst has filed a case against Pratt & Whitney in Delaware. The CEO also added that Wadia Group, the promoters of the airline, remain committed.
We are not filing for bankruptcy. We are filing for a resolution process whereby, by making an application under Section 10, we are trying to move to the NCLT to find out if we can protect our assets and to see how we can again resume the operations under the provisions of the IBC Act. Unfortunately, IBC itself has a name which is called insolvency and bankruptcy, but the purpose of this whole application is for resolution. 24 months they have infused 3,200 crore. Not only that, I think I would be failing in my duty if I don't consider the kind of support which the government has also given. They have given the ECLGS scheme, which is Emergency Credit Line Guaranteed Scheme, and they have given a sanction of 1,500 crore, out of which we have drawn 1,300 crore. So we have actually infused 4,600 crore in last 24 months. If I don't get engines, even after putting more 5,000 crores in next 1 year, then also the entire infusion of the funds will go down the drain. We did receive the compensation from Pratt & Whitney out of the amount which was mentioned in DRHP of around $49 million. And the balance which was post the March 2020, we have still not received the compensation. We continue to raise this issue with them. In fact, we also made claims in the intermediate period in July 2022, as well as when we filed for the arbitration. And the claims are in the range of almost $950 million based on the AOG compensation, which has been evaluated by one of the very well-known firms.
And to watch the entire conversation, tune in to CNBC-TV18 at 9:30 p.m. Let's move on now. The Civil Aviation Ministry has said that it is in constant touch with airlines and OEMs on the issue of grounded aircraft. Piyush Srivastav, Senior Economic Advisor at the Civil Aviation Ministry, spoke to Madiha Mujawar. He said that 2 airlines have been suffering very badly because of one particular engine maker is unable to supply engines.
Two airlines, in fact, have been suffering very badly, and there are 70 AOGs, 70 aircraft on the ground, which is a huge number. We have been in constant touch with the airlines and also the OEM, both at the official level and as well as the diplomatic level.
So Pratt & Whitney was summoned by the Aviation Ministry as well a few months back due to the engine shortage issues. What was their response to the Aviation Ministry?
I'll not like to speak on individual companies, but as I said, this is something that we are taking up at the highest level.
And even as Go First flounders, SpiceJet looks to take advantage. The low-cost airline has said that it plans to revive 25 grounded aircraft. The funds will be drawn from government's ECLGS scheme as well as from companies' cash flow. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that SpiceJet has already mobilized 400 crores to revive these aircraft, which are grounded due to supply chain issues. And there is a possibility that the airline will likely lease more aircraft in the future. Getting you a CNBC-TV18 exclusive now. 4 electric vehicle companies will refund the cost of EV chargers to customers to comply with the subsidy cap under the FAME scheme. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the government will release the subsidies that were withheld so far if customers have been reimbursed. So just to give you a breakup, 140 crores will be reimbursed to customers by Ather Energy. Ather Energy will also be paying the MHI 25 crores, and this is because they had been selling scooters with reduced battery capacity to customers who did not buy the upgraded software. So that's for Ather Energy. Ola Electric will reimburse 130 crore to 1 lakh consumers who purchase the Ola S1 Pro model up to 30th March 2023. TVS will be reimbursing 15.6 crore to 87,000 customers who bought the iQube S between May 2022 and March 2023. Hero MotoCorp, which recently began sales of electric vehicles in 3 cities, will be reimbursing 2.23 crores to 1,100 customers. Now, we're given to understand from the government that they will now start releasing subsidies due to these companies since March this year. But the amount which these companies owe customers will be held up till a compliance certificate is given by these companies. So let's see how things pan out. But the investigations against these 4 companies reaching a closure. TVS Motor Company telling CNBC-TV18 that they will be offering a goodwill benefit scheme for all their customers who have paid over and above the threshold limit fixed by FAME, and the overall impact for TVS will be less than 20 crores. Let's move on now. It's a setback for Deloitte KPMG affiliate BSR and Associates in the IL&FS fraud case. The Supreme Court has set aside Bombay High Court's order quashing Corporate Affairs Ministry's proceedings to prosecute auditors. The court has allowed the SFIO to initiate proceedings against them. Ashmit Kumar now joins us with more. Ashmit, what are you picking up?
Well, just to set the things in context, the proceedings in context, keep in mind that the centre, the MCA, sought to proceed under Section 145 of the Companies Act of 2013. What that essentially does, it gives the centre the power to not only, one, remove the auditor, but once the centre is able to successfully make grounds of fraudulent conduct by the auditors, then essentially what follows is that there could be a 5-year ban, and then subsequently there is also a provision within the Companies Act for punishment, where the punishment can go up to as much as 10 years in jail. So those are, of course, the legal provisions in question. What has transpired today is that the Supreme Court has upheld this power available to the centre, that the centre can in fact go ahead and can seek such form of action against errant auditors, against fraudulent auditors. And while saying that, the Supreme Court has set aside the Bombay High Court order. The Bombay High Court had granted relief and had said that these auditors cannot be proceeded against, the centre cannot take such action. That has been set aside. What this does is that it paves the way for the centre to go ahead and to make an application before the NCLT to seek action against these auditors. That's part one. The other, of course, is criminal proceedings. The Supreme Court, while allowing for the provisions of Section 145 what it has also done is that it has opened doors for the SFIO. The SFIO investigation had been stayed by the Bombay High Court, had been shut down, had been quashed by the Bombay High Court. In flipping that order, what the Supreme Court has also done is that opened this gateway for an SFIO investigation into the matter. So clearly, both as far as Deloitte and BSR are concerned, will be facing action, will be facing heat, not just civil action on account of the potential 5-year ban, but also criminal action at the hands of the SFIO.
Thanks, Ashmit, for joining us. Titan reported a mixed set of numbers this quarter. Revenue beat street expectations. Net profit was in line. Margins missed estimates. However, on a year-on-year basis, the company reported double-digit growth across all parameters. Revenue grew nearly 34% this quarter, while net profit nearly doubled. In global earnings, Starbucks beat street expectations in the second quarter. Revenues came in at $8.7 billion, which beat estimates of $8.4 billion. This was powered by better-than-expected international sales. The coffee giant saw its same-store sales increase in China for the first time since Q3 of 2021. China is Starbucks' second-largest market. In the US, same-store sales were up 12%. Ford Motor Company came out with a stellar Q1. The firm topped estimates on all fronts. This as the automaker's fleet and legacy operations outweighed growing losses in EVs. Automotive revenue came in at over $39 billion versus an estimated $36 billion. The firm reiterated that it expected a full-year adjusted earnings between $9 and $11 billion. However, Ford added that it expected to lose $3 billion from its electric vehicle operations. Time for a short break. But up next, Madhya Pradesh farmers are struggling with bumper harvests even as the government puts into place a market intervention scheme. A special report from rural Madhya Pradesh when we are back. Welcome back. You're watching India Business Hour. India will spend an estimated $1 trillion by 2030 to ensure its industries are compliant with climate change norms, according to an RBI report. The report also said different sectors of the economy have different emission intensities, and it is advisable to not have a uniform climate mitigation strategy across sectors. The Enforcement Directorate has conducted searches at multiple premises linked to Manappuram Finance in Kerala. This is in connection to a money laundering investigation. The allegations pertain to illegal collection of deposits of over 100 crore rupees from the public without RBI approval and cash transactions without following KYC norms. Registered investment advisors have written to market regulator SEBI to seek clarification on the new advertisement rules. SEBI has barred the use of superlatives like number one, best, among others. Investment advisors are concerned that the rules may impact business and that there is no clarity if the rules apply to existing clientele. Industry sources tell CNBC-TV18 that SEBI is also planning to formulate a centralized investment account for registered investment advisors to collect money from investors. In international news, Ukraine has denied any involvement after Russia accused Kyiv of a drone attack on the Kremlin to assassinate President Putin. Russia has claimed 2 drones that attempted to attack Kremlin were shot down. Sanjay Suri joins us now with the latest. Sanjay, what are you picking up?
In a dramatic new development, Kremlin says that Ukraine attempted to assassinate President Putin in a drone attack. It says 2 Ukrainian drones headed to attack the Kremlin were shot down. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says Putin was not in Kremlin or in Moscow at the time of the attack. The Russians now say that they have the right to hit back, marking a clear new escalation, of course. It's hotting up very fast now on the Ukraine-Russia front and increasingly now behind Russian lines. And this marks a dramatic change from the pattern of Russia striking targets within Ukraine, as has been the pattern so far. A fuel tank in Crimea was blown up in an attack on Wednesday close to the Crimea bridge, and an oil depot was blown up, as we know, in Sevastopol in Crimea as well, only late last week. Back in October, we know that the Crimea bridge itself was badly damaged in an attack. This pattern of hitting oil depots could now be the beginning of a Ukrainian strategy to hit energy sources in Russia, Crimea, and to try and cripple the Russian military and to limit their movement in anticipation of a new assault. And this could be a very significant precursor to the attack underway. Clearly, the Ukrainians are preparing for that attack. They are looking to soften targets inside Crimea, inside areas occupied by Russia. Inside Russia itself, that new offensive from Ukraine seems imminent now.
All right, thanks Sanjay for joining us. Back home, wrestlers continued their protest for the 11th day. Seek arrest of Federation Chief and BJP MP Brij Bhushan Singh over allegations of sexual harassment. The Delhi police is yet to arrest Singh despite filing 2 FIRs against him. Indian Olympic Association President PT Usha visits the protest site, assuring support days after criticizing wrestlers for indiscipline. Moving on, the union government has proposed setting up a multi-ministry committee to address concerns of the LGBTQ community. Today, the Solicitor General told the Supreme Court that the panel will examine whether certain rights can be granted to same-sex couples without legal recognition to their relationship. Ashmit is back with us. Ashmit, what more can you tell us about the same-sex hearing in the Supreme Court and the status of the proceedings?
Well, the words that fell from the bench is that even these small steps matter and could lead to larger gains. That's the advice coming in from the Apex Court, from the CJI himself, as well as all the 5 judges of the bench, saying that this is something that should be welcomed by the petitioners. The Solicitor General today submitted before the Apex Court that in trying to find via media, what they've done is that the centre will now be constituting a committee. It will have representation of multiple ministries and will be headed by none other than the Cabinet Secretary himself, and that he will take charge, and that this is a forum, a platform where the petitioners can voice their concerns going forward. Now, initially, the petitioners had echoed concerns, saying that this would only be an administrative exercise, whereas what they've sought, which is recognizing the fundamental right to marry, that is something that will require a court declaration, that will require legislative changes, and that is not something that this committee will be able to do. And that was the concern that the petitioners cited. However, all the 5 judges in unison advised the petitioners that small steps matter, that incremental steps, in fact, is something that will help realize these gains, and in fact even pointed out that even though the Supreme Court or the centre may or may not agree with the right to marry, there is an agreement, at least on the idea of cohabitation, that there are legal consequences, there are practical consequences of cohabitation which will require changes and amendments to various laws. That is something that the committee can in fact go forward and deal with. In fact, at one point the CJI even remarked that would the petitioners want to risk these incremental gains at a time while pursuing larger claims before the Apex Court and the government. So with that advice, the petitioners appear to have reconciled and said that they will take into consideration this committee. But clearly, the government here looking for a via media, and the Apex Court pitching for perhaps more negotiations and conversations between the two sides.
All right, thanks Ashmit for joining us. On the one hand, wheat, maize, gram and mustard farmers in large parts of the country are dealing with destroyed and damaged crops due to unseasonal rainfall, but farmers in these regions who grow crops like cauliflower, onion, potatoes, garlic and capsicum have the exact opposite problem. As part of our ongoing series, What's Ailing Rural India, CNBC-TV18 Santya Gora travelled to Madhya Pradesh and found that bumper production in a few crops has pushed prices down sharply, resulting in heavy losses.
This road leads to Harda district in Madhya Pradesh, around 150 kilometers from Bhopal. At Bhannas village in Harda district lives 56-year-old Poonam Chand Sirohi. His family has been farming this land for generations, and Poonam Chand has seen it all. Failed crop, drought, heavy water logging, unseasonal rainfall and bumper crops. It's this last one that Poonam Chand has a problem with presently. This portion of his land was dedicated to garlic, but a bumper harvest has meant he was in for a shock when he went to market.
किसान तो हर जगह पिट रहा है, हर जगह मर रहा है. जैसे अब की आधा एकड़ में बोया, ये 12-13 कट्टी लहसुन, 14 कट्टी जो भी हुआ, 6 कुंटल 7 कुंटल. अब इसकी कंडीशन ये है कि मार्केट में खुला लेने जाओ तो 40 रुपया पाव दे रहे हैं, और किसान बेचने जाता है तो मात्र 25 रुपये 30 रुपये किलो नीलामी में खरीदती होती है.
Poonam Chand's cauliflower crop, which he had planted on another portion of his farm, met with a worse welcome at market.
मैंने 28 बक्से 20-20 किलो के ले गया था, जिसके मुश्किल से मेरे को 60 रुपये नहीं मिले, यानी ले जाने का भाड़ा नहीं निकला. गोभी में
60 रुपये टोटल नहीं मिले कि एक बक्से के नहीं मिले?
नहीं, टोटली तो फेंक के आ गए हो मंडी में. उससे ही बोल दिया कि भैया अब ये तू ही रख ले 60 रुपये। बोले नीलामी वाला वो 60 रुपये मेरे को देने लगा, तो मेरे को तू ही रख ले।
It's not just small farmers who are struggling with a bumper harvest. Barely 2 kilometers away in Alanpur village, 50-year-old Manoj Patel grows tomatoes, capsicum and chili on over 85% of his 100-acre farm. He says the market prices for these crops are nowhere near break-even.
जो व्यावसायिक खेती हम लोग करते हैं उसमें जो मल्चिंग और ड्रिप पे हम लोग जो खेती करते हैं, तार बांस पे सब्जी लेते हैं, तो उसमें टमाटर और मिर्च में लगभग 2 लाख रुपए एकड़ का खर्च आता है। और लगभग हमको इस बार लास्ट तक आते आते 1.5 लाख रुपए एकड़ का तो नुकसान हुआ है। सरकार का तो किसी भी प्रकार से सपोर्ट होता ही नहीं है इसमें।
It's not just farmers in Madhya Pradesh who are struggling with bumper harvests, depressing prices to unviable levels. Potato farmers in West Bengal, Punjab and UP, capsicum farmers in Punjab and red onion farmers in Maharashtra are also hurting. The government has not been blind to this problem. It has put in place a market intervention scheme to protect farmers by stabilizing the market and giving farmers another avenue to sell their crops without having to resort to distressed sales. But this, experts say, addresses the problem after it crops up. They advise a mechanism for better planning and early warning systems that can help avoid these situations completely.
There needs to be a centralized intervention. There needs to be better planning. Forecasting is required where awareness about the end-use demand is brought into this entire dynamic, and production is planned in a manner that it is not surplus unless we have an opportunity to export our produce.
Farmers say that the government's market intervention scheme is restrictive as it usually applies to only a couple of crops, and even these schemes are often delayed in both announcements and implementation. Many also complain that there is a shortage of initiatives into the research, study and awareness fronts, and that means farmers find it tough to make informed choices like whether they should go with alternative crops, decisions that could help put thousands of rupees in their hands every season. In Harda, Madhya Pradesh, with camera person Bharat Kori, this is Santya for CNBC-TV18.
And keep watching our series on what is ailing rural India. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.